Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meadsy69. Welcome back to the channel. Leading on from our first video, that didn't go so well, to be honest. It didn't get as many views as I'd hoped for the newer players. We're carrying this this little series on where it all started, for me as a player and for many of those players out there. And today we're going to be talking about how you can be top tier all of the time. Every single battle you could be top tier. Now there's only two ways to do that. No, sorry, there's only three ways to do this. One of them is to play tier 10, but not everyone likes to play tier 10, and the other two ways is to play these two particular tanks, and that is the Panzer B2 and the Valentine 2. Why is this? Well, basically these tanks have got preferential matchmaking. They've always had it, and it means they are always high tier. So you'll only ever come up against tier 3 and tier 4. You will never ever see tier 5 in these tanks unless you platoon with someone and that platoon is not one of these tanks. So if you're in a platoon and you're playing with someone with another Panzer B2 or a Valentine, you will still be top tier. Why is that? Why is this these tanks preferential matchmaking? Now, looking at the stats, the armor used to be really good on the Panzer B2, really good. I mean, 50 millimeters. Now it doesn't seem so great, but back in the day the armor profile was so good, and it's still good. It is still good. The sides, if you're angling, it is still pretty good. DPM 1225, not bad. Reload time very good. Penetration 84 on your AP, 120 on your APCR. And these used to struggle. These would always struggle if you are in tier 5s, because you just wouldn't be able to penetrate it anything really. Aim time 2.2, pretty good on the aim time. Dispersion 0.375, and that has 10 degrees of gun depression. And the Valentine 2, obviously Valentine's Day is just past, and maybe we'll see this. Maybe we'll see this back into the game. Who knows? Because these were premium tanks, and now they are collectible tanks. Wargaming do sell them. They do sell them, and when they do sell them, they are pretty cheap. Now the armor profile on the Valentine is 70 on your turret, 62 on your hull. DPM is pretty much the same as the Panzer B2, 1267 with a 3-second reload time. Penetration 51 and 84, so not as good penetration as that of the Panzer B2. And it's 65 alpha per shot. Aim time again pretty good, 2.1. Dispersion 0.355, and again this has 10 degrees of gun depression and 32 kilometers per hour speed. So what are these tanks like? Why are they preferential matchmaking? Now, long ago there was preferential matchmaking in quite a few tanks. Actually, you had the KV5 that would only see the tier above. Now we're talking about when we used to have +2 -2 matchmaking. So tier 8s would see tier 10, tier 6s would see tier 8s, and tier 7s would see tier 9s. But if you're in tier 5, so if you're tier 5, you would see tier 7. But if you're tier 4, you would never see tier 6. So it was sort of tier 4 and below. It was only sort of one level higher. And there was a few, like I said, the KV5, the Type 59, IS6 was another one, and all those tanks you would only see tier 9. Everything else you would see 2 levels high, or you could see 2 levels higher. But there was always been two tanks. There's always been two tanks that had the preferential matchmaking that made it so you would always be top tier. Now, I know sometimes it's frustrating for those that want to grind lines, that want to play tier 4. I mean, not just to farm win rate or anything like that, but just, you know, just to chill. And when you want to play tier 4 in a tank that you consider pretty good, you're always in that tier 5 game, always in the tier 5. You'd never be in a tier 3 game. Very not often you would be in that tier 3 game. But yeah, these two tanks are always top tier. Now this game here in the Valentine, we do get unlucky because every single team, every single player is a tier 4. So even though you're not seeing higher tiers, of course there are a lot of times where the matches are just filled with tier 4s and no tier 3s, but there's still no tier 5s. Now this used to be so much fun back in the day. It really was fun because it was a way to farm win rate. And if you're in a platoon with someone that doesn't mind playing lower tiers, and I was one of those, like I didn't care about stats back then. I didn't care about average damage or even sort of win rate as such. I just wanted to have fun. And that's what me and a work colleague did. Me and a work colleague used to just double Panzer B2s, and we was always top tier. And when you are always top tier in a Panzer B2 back then, it was almost guaranteed a win. So you would pretty much win like 80 to 90% of the time. It was very hard to lose. And what me and my workmate used to do was just sort of take turns in getting 7 kills, like getting the Rosani medals, because it was just so easy, because everyone would die around you, and then you in a tier 3 game up against 2 Panzer B2s was very, very difficult. So it was fun. It was fun back then. Obviously people don't know that, I mean, people have made videos about the Panzer B2 and the Valentine having that preferential matchmaking, but most of you players probably wasn't even around back then when we had the +2 -2 matchmaking, and when this was actually a thing, because nowadays it's not really a thing with the Panzer B2. No one really talks about it as much as they used to, but it was something that sort of stayed with me. And like I said, there are many players out there that like to go higher tier, that like to play tier 10, that likes to focus on win rate, average damage, and etc. But I was never that player. I've never ever been that player. I don't care what tier I play. If I'm in a platoon with a friend and he chose tier 1, I would go tier 1, no problem whatsoever, because I just didn't care. And this was fun. Driving 2 of these tanks was actually fun. In tier 3, watching all these little BT2s come and try and penetrate you, it just wasn't going to happen. And especially when there's 2 of you with the DPM that you both have got, and the reload and the armor, there's just nobody could deal with you. But yeah, I don't know why. I really don't know why Wargaming made these 2 tanks like the preferential matchmaking that it had, or that it's got. Of course, when Wargaming removed the preferential matchmaking, or sorry, when they removed the +2 -2 matchmaking, of course, all those tier 8s that had the preferential matchmaking, that would become no more, because you could only see a tier higher anyway. And these are the only 2 tanks in the game that has kept that preferential matchmaking. So if you don't own these tanks, it's definitely worth getting. They do come for sale regularly, especially I don't really see the Valentine 2 come for sale often, but you never know, it might be in store by the time this video hits, because it is Valentine's. But the Panzer B2 usually comes for like £5. It usually comes for £5, and if you don't care what tier you play, if you like going to the lower tiers, then of course that's a really good £5 spent, in my opinion. Get a mate to do it, go and have some fun, and just watch all these tanks just bounce you like we're getting here. Everyone's just bouncing me. I'm still full hit points for now, and then we could just go around and every 3 seconds just farm these guys. Of course, I'll definitely recommend running the calibrated shells, because the penetration isn't great on these tanks, and some tanks you do struggle to penetrate. But we are starting to lose a little bit of hit points now from this Panzer S35. But at this point, you know, we've already done 1,000 damage. You're never going to pick up like a monster amount of damage in this unless you are quite lucky. I mean, I think the most damage I've done in this is around 2,700, something like that. New players, if the new players of course buy this tank, then even better, because not only are you always going to be top tier, but you're going to have that bot matchmaking as well, where you're just going to come up against bots all the time, and bots will not be able to deal with this tank. 100% they will not be able to deal with this tank. So your first lot of games should be almost a guaranteed win. So yeah, I mean, if it does come for sale, I would definitely recommend purchasing it, because they are cheap. They're always cheap when they come, and even though you probably won't play it that often, it's still something that you should have in your garage. It's still something that's pretty decent, a bit of fun. And if you just want to chill, if you've had enough of the higher tiers, if you're playing tier 8 or tier 9 and you're constantly getting you're constantly lower tiered, and you're always up against the high tier tanks, then just roll out in the Panzer B2, have a bit of fun, be top tier for a while, and you know, just maybe you'll get some win rate and some kills and maybe just a little bit of damage as well. So those of you that don't know that, I mean, I'm sure most of you that already know that this has that matchmaking, but if you don't, you now know. So if you do see this tank in the stores, it still has that matchmaking. You will always be top tier. You will never ever see tier 5 unless you are platooning with someone in a different tank. So if I was platooning someone in a Hetzer, of course, then I would be able to see tier 5. So if you do tune, make sure you only tune with someone playing the same tank or the Valentine 2. So yeah, a little bit of history there for you guys that don't already know, and another episode of my my little series that I'm doing pretty much for this week and maybe a little bit of next week, going back, you know, a bit of nostalgia and looking back at my Blitz career and where it all started. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you like this little series. There are more series, more episodes to come of the of this where it all started, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm meadsy69. I'll catch you all soon. Bye bye.